Everyone watching this knows that it's very important to focus on the quality of food we eat. But what doesn't get as much attention is being able to focus on when not to eat. I'm Dr. Rodney White with Chiropractor. Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk a lot about fasting, because fasting seems to be growing in the popular trend and it's become a buzzword and maybe a new fad, but there's actually a lot of science and history behind it. So we just wanted to go over some of the benefits, some of the ways to do it, and of course some of the things to watch out for. Number one being our medical disclaimer as always. This video is not meant to be medical advice. It is our opinion only from the research we've done. If you have a significant health issue, while we believe fasting will often help you with that, make sure you're under the supervision of your MD, a chiropractor who understands functional nutrition, or another health professional like that, to make sure that you get the benefits you're looking for without putting yourself at any kind of health risk. So why is fasting important? And why is it so vital to our health? Well, we're not designed just to be constantly eating all day except when we're asleep. In fact, if you think about our ancestors, they went hours, maybe days without food. And while it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing, that's how our body was built to not just survive, but thrive. We are meant to be able to go that long. Our body does certain things that allows us to do that. In fact, it's only in the very last short little period of our history where we've had constant access to all different types of foods, that regardless of what season we're in or anything like that. And so by incorporating fasting in the right way, it can help your body function at a far better level than it used to, or than it has been, where we're eating constantly. See, the average American has been convinced by the food companies and the food industry that we need our 3 square meals a day and lots of snacks in between. In fact, the average American has 15.5 eating events throughout the day. That means including all meals and all separate times we go to snack, on average that's happening 15 to 16 times a day. Our ancestors never had that. Our body's not built for that, and that's why so many of us are struggling. You look at the huge increase in obesity and type 2 diabetes and all these other health issues we're having, that people like to joke about paleo diets and things, saying, well, yeah, that's great, but they didn't live past 30. Well, there was wild animals, different conditions. We didn't have sewage. We had infectious diseases running rampant, all these different things going on. But we didn't have these chronic long-term health and autoimmune issues that we now have from partly, or a big part, from our diet and our nutrition and our food, or at least our poor nutrition or lack of nutrition. So to get really in depth into the fasting, there's 2 books we recommend. One's called The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung, and the other one is Fat for Fuel by Dr. Joe McCullough. Now that's more of a keto style book, but he has a great section on fasting because that's something that he's done a lot of work and science around and applies a lot. And so we really like a lot of the information from both of those. So why is fasting important and what does it do? Well, there's a few simple things. It's going to immediately decrease some of the calories we have. It forces you to eat better quality food so that you don't get hungry as quickly. And we're about to jump into all the benefits from it. But it just helps us live closer to what we're meant to. I mean, look at even the term breakfast. It's break fast. When we're meant to stop eating 3 hours before we go to bed. That's why we get a better sleep when we do. And then we're breaking that fast whenever we decide to eat with breakfast. I mean, it's part of our culture. It's all in there, yet we're not doing it anymore. Most people are snacking up until the time they go to bed, and then they start snacking immediately or eating breakfast from the time they wake up. So what are some of the benefits from fasting? Well, fasting acts like exercise, meaning it's a biological stressor on our body. When you exercise, let's say for example, when you're lifting weights, you're literally breaking up muscle so that it will repair in a better, stronger form than what it was. When you run a lot of miles or do cardio work, you're stressing your lungs and your breathing system and your heart and your cardiovascular system to perform at a better rate. Well, that's what fasting does. It stresses our body and stresses our cells to function even better. Now, we're not saying go a week without food. Some people do, and I'm sure there might be some results from that, but I couldn't do that, and I don't think that's smart for 99% of people. But when we do fast properly, here's just some of the benefits that we get. It will stabilize your blood sugar levels. It decreases insulin production, which therefore is going to help with insulin resistance. So that's huge for the type 2 diabetes sufferers out there and the pre-diabetics. Our gut and immune system get to rest. We don't want our digestive enzymes and our immune system functioning just over and over all the time. And it will actually even trigger our stem cells to produce more white blood cells, which is what boosts the immune system. So it will actually make you more resistant to illness. Ketones are produced, so that means we preserve more muscle mass. When we've burnt a lot of the sugar in our body, we then want to go to burning ketones and get fat loss. We don't want to be burning muscle mass. So ketones help with that. Our metabolic rate goes up, which of course is definitely going to help us burn fat. Our damaged cells get cleared out of the body. See, our cells are constantly being damaged and repairing, and we're turning over. There's some science that shows in kind of a funny regard, you're a new person every 7 to 10 days because those cells keep reproducing and turning over. But we want our body to get rid of those damaged cells as quick as possible and as efficiently as possible. And when we go through long periods of time without eating, that's what happens. Our body can get rid of a lot of those things. And then the longer you do get used to fasting, even if it's just intermittent fasting, which is what we're really going to focus on later, and then you eat better quality foods that are high in the super fats that we've talked about in our keto podcasts, the less hungry you are. So you actually curb a lot of the excess appetite so many of us have by fasting. At first, that won't happen. You'll have a small period where you're hungrier as your body transitions from relying on all this food all the time, and especially in sugar burning, but that will flip around for you. They're also seeing in some research that it might actually be decreasing some of the hormones that promote cancer. It will definitely decrease the inflammation you have, because to be able to fast, you have to eat better quality foods so you're not getting as much inflammation, and that inflammation is one of the key drivers to cancer anyway. It's also been shown to slow the rate of aging, and it will protect brain function. So that's massive for people who are suffering from the early signs of chronic brain disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Now, when you get deeper into those, fasting isn't necessarily a good idea. It can be, but that's where you must have a medical professional monitoring you. But if you're just starting to get the early signs, and you can start training your body now to live on intermittent fasting, you potentially might slow down that degenerative process. That's going to be huge. In fact, one study they did with mice, they genetically engineered the mice to get Alzheimer's disease. And they engineered it so these mice would get it at about 1 year of life, which was equivalent to 40 to 50 years of age in a human. They found that if they just simply did alternate day fasting with these mice, where they ate for 1 day, then fasted for a day, these mice would still get Alzheimer's, but it would take 2 years, or approximately 90 years equivalent of humans. So that's huge. They doubled the time it took for those mice to get the Alzheimer's they were programmed to get just by doing alternate day fasting. Now again, we're not saying alternate day fasting is what you should do, it's just what they did in the study. On another interesting note, they then had some of the mice go on just only a junk food diet. So instead of taking 1 year like they were programmed to get Alzheimer's disease, 9 months. That's how much faster they got it because of the inflammation. It's crazy how we're being able to show all of this. So instead of trying to regulate calories and count calories, that's stressful. That's tough to do. It's very hard to keep following. You don't want to live your life every day counting those calories, and you can do it for a while. I know a lot of people who have done great with Weight Watchers and some weight loss programs and diets where you do count calories, but as a long-term strategy, it's really, really hard to do. So instead of modifying the calories, yes, modify what you eat so that you're not eating sugar and inflaming processed foods. You want to get your diet cleaner, but mainly focus on modifying when you eat. That's going to make a huge, huge factor. So let's look at the different ways to fast and what ones might be right. Well, first of all, if someone said, what's the best fast for me? Well, it's going to be different for everyone. It's what can you do and what does your body respond well with? You look at blood types and things like that. I don't respond very well if I eat too much meat. I do much better on a plant diet, but that goes with my type A blood type. I've got friends who, if they don't eat like a carnivore, they're exhausted all the time, their stomach doesn't work, but they eat a lot of meat, they do fantastic. Now, that's only a small percentage of people, but that's just one example of the uniqueness. So when it comes to fasting, you can try different things and see what one works for you. Now, we will focus at the end on this intermittent fasting because that seems to be the one that most people can do, and it's getting great results for people. I like that one. I try and do that most days of the week, but we'll get into that. So sometimes when people think of fasting, they think of these whole day or whole days water fast. And I've seen a lot of research that shows if you can handle that, it's really good for your body to do that maybe a couple times a year. Start with just trying to do a 24-hour water fast. That's all I've ever been able to do. And you could build that up to 5 days. I've never seen any research that shows it's smart or gets us anything to go longer than that. It's what we call the law of diminishing returns, where you get benefits, and that line starts to flatten out a little bit. So I've personally been able to do a 24-hour, but that's about it. You want to be careful if you are starting to show signs of hypoglycemia, you're getting weak and trembling and all of those things. And if you're suffering from serious health issues, this can also be really, really good to kickstart your metabolism and kickstart everything in. So if you're really pretty healthy already, you don't necessarily need to do this kind of fast, although there is some good stem cell benefit. So do some research before it if you're thinking about doing it. But if you're very overweight or you have serious health issues and you will do it under medical supervision, this can be a great way to get you started. But you have to be under medical supervision, and you have to be especially careful if you're on blood pressure meds, you have any kind of cardiovascular disease or diabetes, especially type 1 diabetes. That's one that you've really got to be careful of. And for the type 1 diabetics out there, I would, no matter what, you need medical supervision, and you've got to be more careful in starting to change your diet first rather than doing any kind of fasting. Now, also, instead of just doing a water fast, what I have done with that is a 5-day juice fast or a juice cleanse. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Just simply put, for that, you might do something like day 1 through 3, all you're drinking is a lot of water and homemade juices. Day 3 to 4, you might start adding some eggs or at least some egg whites just to get a little bit of protein in, but then you're still drinking your juices. And again, these are homemade juices. This is not something filled with sugar. Then day 5, you add some more complex proteins like organic grass-raised turkey, chicken, wild-caught salmon, something like that, and then you move off it. So that's how you would do it if you're doing more of a 5-day juice cleanse. Then there's another type of fasting called a 5-day fast, but this isn't like the water fast. So in this one, what you do, basically once a month or once every few months, or whatever you choose to do, you have 5 days in a row where you really decrease the calories you have. So day 1, you might consume 1,000 to 1,100 calories. Then days 2 through 5, you'll consume about 725 to 750 calories. You've got to make sure the majority of the food you have at those times is very high fat. That's a hard one to do, not one we necessarily recommend. But just want to let you know what's out there. Then you've got alternate day fasting, where one day you'll eat a normal amount of calories, whatever you normally do. Then on every alternate day, you'll consume a small amount, maybe 500 calories. You drink a lot of water. That would be a good time to do a modified juice cleanse, and then just get your calories from a few other simple things, some high fats, things like that. That one is a lot easier to stick to than some of the other ones, kind of like the 5-2 fast, which that one is you eat normally for 5 days. So this one you're pretty much just doing every week throughout the year. You'd eat normally for 5 days, then the other 2 days of the week, or the last 2 days of the week, you consume a quarter of your normal calories, and then you just keep repeating. That's harder for people to manage than an alternate day fast. But in my opinion, and in the opinion of the authors we've mentioned, and a lot of the other research I've found, the intermittent or peak fasting, as it's sometimes known, is by far the easiest one to follow. It's the least stressful on you mentally and physically, yet you still get a huge amount of all of the fasting benefits that some of these longer fasts do without having to stress your body as much. So there's also a very, very intelligent scientist out there called Rhonda Patrick. We follow a lot of her stuff. She's phenomenal. She's done some great interviews on the Joe Rogan podcast. She's done a lot of science really that has shown that if you eat in a 9-hour window or less throughout the day, you get huge changes in your biological markers. In fact, they took average health people with average diets, not full of junk food, but not extremely healthy, and they had one group eat in the normal amount of hours people would eating, like basically the whole time you're awake. You might eat breakfast immediately and dinner an hour or two before you go to bed. Then they had another group where they could only eat in a 9-hour window or less all day. By eating in 9 hours or less and not changing the diet, these people lost weight or their biological markers improved. It was incredible. So I think that that's really the goal we should all start with. So if you've never done any fasting, the first thing you want to do is clean your diet up a little bit. Make sure you're getting comfortable eating more super fats and start cutting down on carbs and anything else that breaks down into sugar. Then when you start this, start aiming for just a 9-hour window. You don't have to decrease it yet. And you might just try this 1 or 2 days a week. The aim eventually is to be able to do 5 to 7 days a week doing this 9-hour window or less. And you can get that down to anywhere from 4 to 9 hours is where you're going to get good benefits. Anything under 4 hours, you're starting to now, again, get that law of diminishing returns, and you're really turning it into a 24-hour water fast at that point, and that's not something you should be doing consistently. But if you're eating in a 4 to 6 hour window, up to 9 hours max, you're doing this intermittent fasting every single day. And it's actually easier than you would think. If we have 24 hours in a day, and we eat for 9 hours, then we have to go 15 hours without consuming anything other than water. Well, if you follow the rules of good sleep, which means stopping to eat 3 hours before you go to bed, then there's 3 hours already. If you then sleep for 8 hours, you're already at 11 hours when you wake up. If you're a 10-hour a night sleeper, you're already at 13 hours. So you only need to go 2 hours of being awake before you eat anything other than water, and you've finished your 15-hour fast, and now you can start eating and do your 9 hours again. It is far more doable than you would think. When I started it, it was almost impossible. I couldn't do it. I'd get weak and shaky. But as you get better at it, it gets easier. But there's a couple other keys. You have to stay hydrated, because a lot of the time our brain tells us we're hungry is when we're actually dehydrated. So you want to drink a lot of water. And if you eat far more fats rather than sugars, so if you're eating avocados, some little coconut oil snacks, if you have coffee and you're putting ghee and coconut oil in there instead of dairy milk, all of that is going to help big time. Then it makes it easier for you to stick to it and to actually follow it rather than sugar burning, and it becomes almost impossible. So you clean up the diet and get more fats going on, and then you just practice and get better at it. Then you'll start getting to the point where some mornings I just forget to eat now until I get to maybe 12 or 1 or 2 o'clock, and then I'll start eating, and I might only eat in a 5 or 6 hour window that day. But that's not my goal. I think you're best to aim for that 8 to 9 hours. And if you have 1 or 2 days a week where you're doing well and you don't need to eat, then don't eat. If you're new to it and you're struggling to do it, rather than fully breaking the fast, if you're 13 hours in, let's say you've woken up and you needed to go 4 more hours, but you're only 2 hours, have something like a bulletproof coffee, a good quality coffee with a lot of fat. That fat, yes, it's cheating, but it's nothing that your body really needs to struggle to break down. And that fat will really keep you going so that you don't have to go and cheat and eat something else. You'll find as you start doing that, you'll also be able to work out better once you get used to it. So I'll wake up in the morning and go and work out hours before I eat breakfast, because now you're burning ketones, and that's a very, very sustainable fuel resource for your body. And then all of a sudden you do that, you work out, and after a really good workout, as most of you watching this probably know, you're not really that hungry anyway when you've burnt a lot of sweat and energy. So that actually makes it easier. So now if you stop eating 3 hours before bed, then you sleep for 8 hours or more, then you get up and do a really good workout, you're going to make it easily through that 15 hours. Again, we have to talk about the medical disclaimer. Whether you're intermittent fasting or doing any other kind of fast, if you have any health issue whatsoever, make sure you're under medical supervision. But let's talk about the people who shouldn't fast or should be very careful of it. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, do not worry about fasting and do not worry about your 9-hour eating window. You need more calories than you normally would. You're feeding a human inside you, or you're feeding a human with the breast milk you've got to make. Do not fast while you're doing that. If you're under 18, meaning you're a child, do not worry about fasting and intermittent fasting. You have different growth needs, so you don't count. If your BMI is under 18.5 or you have any kind of eating disorder, do not do any fasting because you have some other issues that need to be taken care of. The signs of hypoglycemia, if you are trying to fast and you need to break it, some of the signs include this. And hypoglycemia, basically means decreased blood sugar. This is especially important if you're a type 2 diabetic. Lightheaded, shaky, confused, starting to feel like you're going to faint or you do faint, sweating, blurred vision, blurred speech, pins and needles in your fingers, hands, feet, all of those things, all of those mean you probably need to break the fast and you need to speak to your doctor. Another key piece to remember when you are fasting, you need to stay not just hydrated, but you need to be adding some good quality minerals or at least some Himalayan salt to your water every day, because we burn a lot of those things a little faster when we're in that ketosis state, that fasting state. So you really want to make sure you're not just hydrating, but you're getting the electrolytes in it so that your body can absorb everything. One other thing, mix it up. You don't want your body to have a plateau and get used to things. So let's say you don't want to try and eat in a 4 to 6 hour window, 7 days a week for 6 months in a row. Maybe go hard like that, where if you're doing really well with it, maybe 4 to 6 days a week you're eating in that smaller window, and on the other 1 or 2 days go all the way to that 9-hour window, or maybe even break it. I'll do 1 or 2 days a week where I'm just not strict on it. If I wake up, I feel like having a protein shake at 8 o'clock, I'll have it at 8 o'clock, and then I might not have dinner until 7. That's fine. But when I eat in a longer window like that, I'll make sure I'm more strict with it the next day. Maybe go longer into my fast to help burn some of that, maybe not. If you've had a weekend day where you're at a party and you ate a lot of chips and dip and bad foods and had alcohol, it is a good idea to try and fast as long as you can the next day, because you burn out all of that sugar and that inflammation quicker than it just staying in the body if you're eating. So you can mix it up. You don't have to be super strict with this. That's what's so great about this intermittent fasting. It's so easy to do because you can be so variable with it. You don't have to worry too much about being exact. So I think it's the best way to try it. I think fasting is very valuable for virtually all of us. But again, make sure you check with your doctor first if you do have any health issues, and start slowly. Dip your toes in the water. Don't just jump all the way into the pool. And if you have tried it and had great results, we'd love for you to share with us. Share in the comments what's worked for you. If you haven't tried it or it didn't work for you, share those comments too. Let us know either what's holding you back or what went wrong when you tried it, because we can all learn from each other. Maybe there's someone with a specific issue that you have the same issue, and we might be able to all help each other, help you get around that. So thank you so much for your attention. I know this is a longer listen, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on our podcast. We always appreciate it. We'd love if you are listening on our podcast, please subscribe and rate the show and leave us a review. We'd love that feedback there. If you're on YouTube and watching this, just give us a thumbs up and let us know that you made it all the way through to the end. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm Dr. Rodney White with Sapa Chiropractic. We'll see you next time.